This is Lear Media, and I'm Pat Burry, and welcome along to another edition of Heroes and Icons on Lear Media. And we have an email if you want to make any comments on anything that comes up in the show. It's info@learmedia.tv. And this is series 2 of our Heroes and Icons, and this is episode 3 of Heroes and Icons. And really, anybody that's looking at this will know instantly and recognize that wonderful face behind us here. Of course, the subject for today's episode, Eugene Conan Kelly, to give him his full name. He was an American actor, dancer, singer, filmmaker, choreographer, an all-around fantastic good guy, really, you know. Of course, he was born in August the 23rd, 1912, Gene Kelly, as he was remembered for all the films and all the things. He was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as said, in 1912, which was, I suppose, a challenging time socially for people in many countries. You had the run up to the First World War. That's how long ago it was, you know. His father was James Patrick Joseph Kelly. He was a phonograph salesman. Now, I know a lot of you will be too young to remember what the phonograph was, but anyway, the forerunner of the LP's record player and all of that. And his mother was Harriet Catherine Hearn. And I suppose he came to dancing. Well, his mother was, himself and his brother were enrolled by his mother when Gene was 8 years old in the local dancing school. And obviously at the time, when boys were boys and girls were girls, Gene Kelly himself gave up the dancing shortly after that because of all the, I suppose he couldn't withstand the stagging, and I suppose the remarks were passing and all of that. There's a lot of cruelty. We call it bullying now today, and it still is bullying, but at that time, you know, it's just banter and, you know, just get on with life, and I suppose be as tough as you can be. So as a result of that, he gave up the dancing, as I said, due to terrible taunting from the lads in the neighborhood. And really, he became an accomplished sportsman, all-round sportsman, baseball, football, you name it. He was excellent and excelled in it. And that, of course, taught him a lot about resilience, about how to defend himself, and he learned that very quickly, and it built him up physically as well, and I suppose character-wise, indeed, as all sports do. There's no doubt about that. You know, it's great for character building, comradeship, friendships, and all of that, which is fantastic, and it's healthy as well by and large. These games. Then he didn't really get back to serious dancing until he was 15, which I suppose was you know, old enough really, you know, but he was physically very, very fit, fantastically fit. And then he decided the parents, he went off to college and to study law. But whilst he was attending law school, his parents opened the Gene Kelly Studio Dance in 1932, when Gene would have been around 19 or 20 then, of course. And it became very, very successful in the Pittsburgh area. And Gene Kelly himself taught dance in Pittsburgh for the next 7 years. So, I mean, he kept himself busy whilst going to college as well. But then he dropped out of law school in 1937. And which would be, these things take on a life of their own, you know, because your parents, for every son and daughter, they have aspirations and they want them to succeed and they want them to study and all of that. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But Gene Kelly himself decided that it wasn't for him. And in 1937, he moved to New York to further his career. And obviously, he was well known around the area as a choreographer and a very original thinker when it came to choreography and dance, incorporating an awful lot of, I suppose, movements from across the disciplines, including ballet as well. So, I mean, if you look at some of his films, which were absolutely fabulous. Some of them were excellent. You can see that. You can see those influences very much so in his dancing. Anyway, he went off and he was successful teaching and did choreography for some musicals on stage in New York. But he was earning a decent income and all. But I suppose he got a bit disenchanted. He says that himself anyway with the teaching, because he said the first thing he noticed with the classes were the girls outnumbered the boys about 10-1 roughly in dance, and he was trying to, get more physicality into dance, so to speak, more male dancers as well, which he felt was important, and there's not about that for productions and all of that. And he said the thing that disenchanted him in the end, it was no fault of the girls either, is that when they reached around the age of 15 or 16, there was an 80 to 90% dropout from the girls' side. So, this, and together with a few other things, he decided to, go back and try and make it in film, if you know what I mean. And so he went back to Pittsburgh, and he was noticed as well. And in 1940, I mean, he did get his big break in Pal Joey. Now, Pal Joey, he shared the screen with Frank Sinatra. And Frank Sinatra was, Frank Sinatra was young enough. I think he was about 25 himself in 1940. But he got his break in Pal Joey in 1940. And then after that film that he did with Frank Sinatra, it was pretty successful, and it's very successful, that film itself, and I've seen it a number of times. I like it, but that's just me, it's my own opinion. You can take a glance at it yourself if you feel that way inclined. And after that, David O. Selznick signed him to a contract. And in 1942, he made a film with Georgie Garland, Me and My Girl, which was Me and My Gal, or Me and My Girl, with Me and My Gal, which was very successful as well, and very popular. I suppose you could say, when you're looking back at the history of film and musicals, particularly musicals, you could say that Fred Astaire in the 1930s launched the spectacular dance sequence and all of that. But Gene Kelly himself, almost single-handedly, in my opinion, perfected the art form of dance, and even to serve it as dance, it was an art form that he brought to the whole area of dance in those musicals, and just actually the apex, the height of the extravaganza and those lavish musicals in the 1940s and the 1950s, right into the early 60s. So really, I suppose you can be lucky, and not only was he lucky, he worked very, very hard, and Gene Kelly himself, and obviously he was so talented, there's no doubt about that. Anyway, so in 1942, as I said, he made Me and My Gal with Georgie Garland, and Georgie Garland, of course, was in film a long time for a very, very young age, child actor, and she had appeared in 1939 2 years previously in The Wizard of Oz. So her star was rising, and indeed at its height as well. So really those two names in the 1942 did, and of course appearing with Georgie Garland gave him more credibility as well in the wider audience, so to speak, who were expected to go out and pay to watch these. Now, he did Cover Girl in 1944 with the wonderful Rita Hayworth. And of course, it was very well received, Cover Girl. It wouldn't be a spectacular film, but nevertheless, it did extremely well. It paid its way, to say. But then in 1945, there was a musical that came along. To my mind, Gene Kelly, my own opinion, these are all my own opinions here on this show, Anchors Away in 1945. Co-starring again with Frank Sinatra, and I suppose that film, you can see there in the collage we made up for the backdrop, that film over, as you're looking at the screen over in the left-hand corner with the mouse, that famous dance sequence is from that film, Anchors Away, with Gene Kelly and Frank Sinatra. And as a result of that film, Gene Kelly was nominated for an Oscar for his part in that film. He didn't win it, but I mean, at least, indeed, by being nominated alone that time, further your career and your credibility and your acceptance into the wider industry, I suppose, as well. There's a lot of things that go along with that, you know. But anyway, so then, as a result of that, he moved into, so he was with MGM from 1946 to 1952. And during his time with MGM, some of his earliest films were successful in MGM, indeed. I'm not going to read out all the films he did, because there were way too many. But as a result of at MGM and his star rising and his stock rising and his credibility and all that, he was allowed and indeed encouraged and allowed to do his own, to choreograph all the dance sequences in the particular musical he was in. So he had some artistic license, some artistic, I suppose, artistic license himself, you know, that he was given complete charge of that aspect of the musical that he'd be appearing in. So that was very important, I suppose, a very important development, really, you know. And then in 1949, he did his final film with, not his final film, but his final film with Frank Sinatra again, On the Town, which was very, very successful. I don't know if anybody, you may remember that. On the Town, Frank Sinatra and Gene Kelly and a host of others. And it was really, really, I suppose, a very successful film, as I said. And again, it's another one for the archives, another one for you to digest, another one for you to look up and go back into your back catalogue. On the Town, 1949, and it's as fresh as ever. You take my word for it, and if you don't like it, well, you know, you can email. This is Little Media, Heroes and Icons. On Series 2, Episode 3, myself, Papa. We have an email. It's info@littlemedia.tv for any comments or any suggestions for any heroes and icons that you might like to hear about that maybe have been forgotten about or not spoken about as frequently as one would like today. So then we're coming along now to, I suppose, the high point. Well, he had many high points that we mentioned all along, but to my own opinion, and these are all my own personal opinions of the man, Gene Kelly, subject for the program today. In 1951, he made, to my mind, one of my favorite musicals, An American in Paris. And that, of course, really, you don't have to take my word for it. That's my favorite, one of my favorites, Gene Kelly. I would really go to see that if it was advertised anywhere, even today. 1951, An American in Paris, which won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. I mean, really, when you think about those musicals were just, the budgets for the musicals were enormous at the time. The production, presentation were just second to none, and every detail was paid attention to. And Gene Kelly was just superlative in An American in Paris. And I suppose one of the most famous dance sequences in any musical, in my opinion, is the 17-minute long dream sequence with himself and a young actress who was making her debut in that film in 1951 at 19 years of age, wonderful Leslie Caron. And some of you know who remember her. She was just fabulous, and 17 minutes long for something like that was just fantastic. And that sequence stood out for me among many others, of course, you know. And that very year as well, in 1951, Gene Kelly got an honorary Oscar for his contribution to dance and choreography. So he got a special Oscar for that from the Academy, which recognized the genius. And for anyone who was going to films in the 40s and 50s, 60s, well, it was plain for anybody to see the genius of the man, the incredible talent, a really, really incredibly dedicated actor and dancer, and really was a continuous trying to hone and perfect his act, his dancing, his craft, you know. Then, of course, in 1952, he made another musical, which an awful lot of people would consider would have been their favorite musicals. I mean, it's always a toss-up in my mind between An American in Paris, which I just mentioned, and in 1952 came Singing in the Rain with the wonderful Donald O'Connor and Sid Charisse. Now, that to me was just another superlative musical. There's no doubt about it, you know. Now, at that time, we had the beginning of the television as well, you know, which nobody knew at the time what kind of an effect it would have on the entertainment business in general. But nevertheless, that these musicals that I told you about, that Gene Kelly was involved in, all the others as well. I mean, there was a whole host of fantastic dances, to whom to mention, both male and female. And in 1952, Singing in the Rain, of course, really, look, what can anyone say about it? The sequence, you can see him there with his umbrella in the backdrop. And really, that anytime you hear the first few bars of that, the title song of the title track of the film, well, really, everybody can hum along with it. Of course, Donald O'Connor was just another fantastic dancer. So Kelly was had to be anybody dancing with Donald O'Connor would really want to be top of their game. Of course, Gene Kelly himself was just fantastic, you know, just fantastic. Anyway. That was 1952. I suppose you could say then, from the late 1950s, the musicals began to decline. I don't mean decline as a spectacle, but budgets for musicals began to shrink with the advent of television, and so that consequently toned down the production value, not the production value, but as I said, once the budgets weren't as big, the musicals weren't as good. Not that there was anything wrong with the actors or acting in it, but really the decline of the musicals. They had their time in the 40s and 50s and very early 60s. That was the musical with Gene Kelly. Now, obviously, I mean, with Gene Kelly himself, he was not just a choreographer and a teacher, and well, a fantastic teacher as well. There's no doubt about that, you know. And he had successful schools, as I said, choreography and all of that. But Gene Kelly himself was a very, very fit man and always kept himself very fit, as I said. But he had his own ideas as well, you know. He was single-minded, and I suppose he had to be, you know. He had to be, you know. And as I said, the Singing in the Rain is what we're talking about in 1952. I mean, I suppose he imitated a solo dance routine to the title song. And along with the Moses Supposes routine with Donald O'Connor and the Broadway Melody finale with Sid Charisse in that particular musical, the film now did not initially generate the same enthusiasm, as I said, as An American Paris, but it has subsequently overtaken the earlier film to occupy its current preeminent place in the esteem of those wonderful creatures called the critics. And he had his own single-minded opinions about dance. And he said, I suppose Kelly's, it has been said, quoted about him, that Gene Kelly's athleticism gave his moves a distinctive, broad, muscular quality. But this was a deliberate choice on his part. As he explained, I quote him, "There's a strong link between sports and dancing." Now, as we mentioned in his earlier career, he excelled in all sports, and in sports he put his mind to, whether it was baseball, basketball, or football. He was fantastic in it. And my own dancing, he says, springs from my early days as an athlete. And he said, I think dancing is a man's game. And if he does it well, he does it better than a woman. Now, Leslie Caron said that while dancing with Astaire, she felt like she was floating. But Kelly danced close to the ground. He railed against what he saw as widespread effeminacy in male dancing, which in his opinion tragically stigmatized the genre, alienating boys from entering the field. And dancing, he said, does attract effeminate young men. He said that, just a quotation from Gene Kelly. I don't object to that as long as they don't dance effeminately. Now, I just say that if a man dances effeminately, he dances badly, just as if a woman comes out on stage and starts to sing bass. Unfortunately, people confuse gracefulness with softness. John Wayne is a graceful man, and so are some of the great ball players, he said. But of course, they don't run the risk of being called sissies. I think a lot of that will be happening back to his own childhood, happening right back when he gave up dancing because of the awful slagging he got, in his neighborhood. Now, he said, in his view, and I quote Gene Kelly again, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it, I'm just putting it out there for people to think about it. One of our problems is that so much dancing is taught by women. You can spot many male dancers who have this tuition by their arm movements, he said. They are soft, limp, and feminine. He acknowledged that in spite of his own efforts in TV programs such as Dancing a Man's Game, for example, the situation changed little over the years. And there you are. That's why he gave up dancing, I think, He said he also sought to break away from the class-conscious conventions of the 1930s and early 40s when top hat and tails or tuxedos were the norm, by dancing in casual and everyday work clothes, so as to make dancing more relevant to the cinema-going public. Well, that's a fair point, because his first wife was actress and dancer Betsy Blair. Betsy Blair said, a sailor suit or his white socks and loafers or the t-shirts on his muscular torso gave everyone the feeling that he was a regular guy, and perhaps they too could express love and joy by dancing in the street or stomping through puddles. He democratized the dance in movies. And this is a fair quote now from herself, his wife, Blair, Brenda Blair, indeed. Now, Gene Kelly, as I said, did an awful lot of TV, did a bit of TV work in the 70s and the 80s as well. But then he was married, Gene Kelly was married 3 times. And as I said, Betsy Blair, he was married to Betsy Blair from 1941 to 1957. And he had a son called Kerry, who was born in 1942. Some people like that kind of detail. His second wife was Ginny Coyne, who he married in 1960 till 1973. And they had 2 children, Timothy and Bridget. And then he finally got married in 1990 to Patricia Ward. Jean was 77 at the time when he got married to her, and she was 30 years of age. So, but, of course, he was awarded Irish citizenship under a scheme that time as well. So he had an Irish passport holder as well. That's Gene Kelly. So there you go. Now, in 1994, Gene Kelly suffered a stroke, which left him debilitated a bit, but he still got out and about, But then in 1995, he got another stroke, which really left him semi-paralyzed and mainly confined to his home, but he continued to entertain and have an awful lot of people around. So that's Gene Kelly himself, And so finally, on February the 2nd, 1996, at his home in Beverly Hills, Gene Kelly passed away just short of his 84th birthday. That was Gene Kelly, and he's 84, just short of his 84th birthday by a month or 2. And of course, to me, there hasn't been a dancer, in my opinion, to touch him. There's been, Fred Astaire, and there's been dancers maybe sometimes as good as him, Donald O'Connor, but to me, Gene Kelly would be top of the heap for his innovation, for his complete approach to dance, and his complete approach to choreography, incorporating many movements of ballet and other modern dance into the sequences. And you can see that in American in Paris and Singing in the Rain, of course, and My Pal Joey and all of those. His body was cremated without a funeral or service. And you can look up and read more. All we hope to do in this edition is to give you a little pen picture of the wonderful Gene Kelly. Untouchable in my view, top of the pile, considered the 15th When they do these polls, the top 100 most influential film stars in the history of Hollywood, Gene Kelly comes in at number 15, which is no mean feat when you consider the history of actors and actresses that have gone through Hollywood. He comes in at number 15 in the all-time top 100. So that's a testament to the man himself and to the dedication of his art. So this has been Heroes and Icons, Series 2, Episode 3 with myself, Pat Barry. Tell all your friends about us. You can get all the programs up on our YouTube channel, Their Media TV, and an email, info@theirmedia.tv. If you want to have any suggestions for a hero or an icon you'd like to hear or see about, please drop us a line and we'll do the best we can. So from this edition of Heroes and Icons, until we meet again, take care and God bless.